Hi everyone, it's Donovan with Serverless Solutions, and today we're kicking off a brand new series on building secure agentic AI applications. Throughout this series, we're going to build and secure an MCP server together and integrate it with VS Code's agent mode. Today we're going to talk about what MCP servers are, why you might care about them, and why the recent changes to the security specification brings MCP servers more in line with security requirements for enterprise development. Now, before we jump into definitions and specifications, I thought it would be fun to show you a demo of the final working product that we'll be building together. I've already started my Pokemon MCP server in the background, and I'm going to go ahead and kick off the integration with Visual Studio Code here. Now, the nice thing about working with VS Code's agent mode is that it works really well with Microsoft's Intra ID, which we'll be using to secure our MCP server. So I'm going to go ahead and authenticate with Intra off screen because I don't want you to see my login credentials, and then we'll be right back. Now that we're back, we can see that VS Code has recognized 3 tools for my MCP server. I've actually built 4, but only 3 are approved for use for my role with that application. So let's go ahead and give it a try. I'm going to start off by asking my agent what Pokemon are available to catch. Now what you can see is that the agent knows that it wants to use a tool, but it's going to ask me for permission to execute that tool on my behalf. I have different options. I can allow it just this once. I can allow in the session, in the workspace, or always. For today, we're just going to allow in this session. So the agent has now used my tool to find which Pokemon are available to catch. And of course, I want to catch Pikachu. So let's give that a try. Once again, agent mode has discovered another tool that it wants to use, and it's going to go ahead and ask if I'm cool with that. I totally am, because I really want to catch that Pikachu. Now that I've successfully caught my Pikachu, let's see what else is available. Now, since I gave permission to run the Get All Pokemon tool in this session, it's not going to ask again. It's going to reach out to my MCP server and get a refreshed list of what Pokemon are available to catch, which you can see here. So now that we've successfully tested our application, let's go ahead and dive a little bit into the definition of what MCP servers are and what the changes in the security specification have been and what that means for you. So the definition for MCP, or Model Context Protocol, is this. It's an open source standard for connecting AI applications to external systems. Using MCP, AI applications, like VS Code's agent mode, can connect to data sources, tools, and workflows, enabling them to access key information and perform tasks. So where I built a silly MCP server based on Pokemon, you might build your own MCP server to securely surface data from an enterprise API or some other source within your organization. We can think of MCP like a USB port for AI applications. So just as USB provides a standardized way to connect electronic devices, MCP provides a standardized way to connect AI applications to external systems. And if you've ever struggled with plugging in a USB cable, you might have experienced frustration similar to what it felt like to implement authentication and authorization for an MCP server in the previous version of the security specification. So let's go ahead and take a look at what that was like. So if we look at the previous version of the specification for the authorization flow, we can see a lot of responsibility for authorization is on the MCP server. It's in charge of handling the authorization endpoint. It's in charge of handling the token requests with the code and code verifier, generating an access token, a refresh token, and then interacting with those access tokens that are passed to it. Now, there is an affordance for using a third-party authorization service like Intra ID, and let's take a look at what that looked like in the previous version of the spec. And here it is. And to be clear, this is a step in the right direction. We do have integration with a third-party auth server, but the MCP server is still doing more work than I would like to for a resource server. It's handling some redirections, some exchanging codes for tokens, third-party access tokens, and there's just a lot of back and forth that still has to be handled by your MCP server. In the new specification, we can see that the MCP server is treated a lot more like a resource server, or a traditional API endpoint that offloads most of the authorization work to an authorization server. So the agent is going to send a request to your MCP server, and like a normal resource server, you're going to say, you're not allowed because you don't have a token. Then the agent is going to say, hey, who should I authorize against? And you're going to tell them, go check with Intra, or go check with Keycloak, or some other provider. Then the rest of the OAuth flow is going to happen between the agent and the authorization server, and your MCP server isn't going to hear anything about it again. until a new request is made for a resource on your MCP server, and it's going to include that access token. Now your MCP server can act like a normal resource server and just validate that token. You can use claims in that token for your own server, or you can generate another token on behalf of the user for use in downstream services, or whatever makes sense for your organization's security needs. Now, I think this is a great step in the right direction and maybe a tipping point for you in considering using MPC servers in your own organization. So over the next few videos, we're going to create an MCP server that conforms to the new specification that uses Microsoft Entra ID for authentication. And we're going to integrate that MCP server with Visual Studio Code like you saw at the beginning of the video. I look forward to building out this application together and growing in our capabilities for building secure agentic AI applications. We'll see you in the next video.